Candidate made a stop in Siouxland tonight to share his campaign agenda. Republican candidate Vivek Ramaswamy spoke at Nova's Carpet in Sioux City, sharing his commitments if he is elected president. His outline includes ideas on force and policy beliefs that he spoke about tonight, ideas on fossil fuels, as well as federal debt and young American voters. And he says if elected to lead America as president, he would get rid of the administrative state and cut ties with China. The overarching theme of his discussion tonight was based on revitalizing people's pride of America.
But to say that the way I want to win the election is not by eliminating the competition by the federal administrative police state doing that work. It's by actually convincing the people of this country. So for me, the reason why is I think we're on the path, we risk being on the path to a national divorce. I don't want to see us get there. I want to switch to a path of leading a national revival. That's why I'm in this race, and I think it's really important that we stand on the side of principle.
And Ramaswamy will continue his visit around Iowa, making stops in Dubuque and Davenport tomorrow. The full link to his town hall meeting can be found right now on our website, ktiv.com.